Cool. So today we're going to go through an introduction, the format of the classes, and then, oh, hi Yoshita, we've just introduced ourselves. Do you want to just introduce yourself to everyone? Your name, where you're from?
I am Yoshita from Mumbai, India.
Nice. Cool. So you can get to know everyone else in the group. So we'll just get started now. We're going to do an introduction, go through the format of the class, and then we will start on Saruktavali chapter 1. How many of you had a chance to read chapter 1 on the blog? 2? The others?
Few messages in the chat.
Okay. How many are here, chat? Siddiq is from Mrs. Suga. Joining class, deep admiration of Sikhi Vedanta literature. Yes, Hanji read it too. Awesome. That's so good that you guys have actually read it. We've just got Ekam joining us now. I think that's the last of the people. Sanalika already told me that she will not be able to join. So Sanalika is from Melbourne. She wasn't able to join the class today. Ekam ji, welcome. If you just want to introduce yourself to everyone and where you're from.
Okay. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I'm a high school student.
Nice. So we've all just introduced ourselves already, so we're just going to get started in the class, okay?
Okay.
Cool. So my role in here, I guess one thing that we just want to be mindful of is that in this class, we're sharing such divine wisdom and we're using English, which is quite a limited language. It's quite a restrictive language. And as an analogy, it's kind of like trying to hold the sun's rays in our hands. So until we get more comfortable using Gurmukhi, which is a language of the divine, it's going to feel like that. And even then, language is always going to have its limitations. But once we do get into the journey, we will start to see that we can recognize that truth even beyond language, even when there is no language. So these classes are going to be in the summary form of the Saruktavali katha that Bhai Manpreet Singh Ji has on his YouTube. And the verbatim word-for-word translation is being put up on those blog posts that you guys will be reading before these classes. In the future, then, they will become parallel to the main class, which at this stage seems to be Gyan Prabodh by Dasam Maharaj. We are focusing on a Naam, which is the simplest journey. So there are many paths to truth. There are many dharams, and we recognize all of them. And then over here, we're trying to share the most simplest path. I hope this is a good place that we can bring up our own upbringings and beliefs well from very different backgrounds, so that we can actually implement this in our life. And at the end of each class, I'm hoping that we can also share about Gurmukhi concepts one by one. So when we get to Gurbani, it's going to be a lot easier. We don't have to translate every single little word bit by bit. And just on that, you don't have to learn or be from a Punjabi household to learn Gurmukhi. So for me, my parents never allowed me to go to the Punjabi classes, which was unfortunate due to some like gender stuff. They let my brothers go, but they wouldn't let me go. So I had to learn Punjabi by myself, and it's just honestly Maharaj Kirpa. I don't know how it happened. I was used to read the 35 Akkar, and I just used to be really enjoying Gurbani. And at some point, I just started understanding and reading Gurbani, and I couldn't read Punjabi though. So I could read Gurbani, but I couldn't read Punjabi. And eventually now over time, I'm actually starting to read Punjabi as well. So definitely Gurmukhi is something that we want to have as shared in this whole class. So that's pretty much the introduction of the format. Let's go into what we're going to learn about, Saruktavali. So the initial text was in Sanskrit, and it was then translated into Sadhu Pacha by Pandit Hardayalji, who was from the Udasi Sampradaya. That was translated because Sanskrit was really inaccessible and hard to understand, and so they translated into something that was more easier to understand. And then we have by Manpreet Singh Ji, he's actually done it even easier and made it done their katha in Punjabi so that we can understand. And then in these classes, we're just doing a summary form of that. Saruktavali is a beginner's text that is shared across all sampradayas, including the Nahangs as well, and it gives a really solid foundation. The good thing is that because we're all from very different backgrounds, we can go through this class, and then before we start with Gurbani, we will end up being in the same spiritual culture. Like we will have the same understanding of a lot of things. So the total text has 15 chapters. So the first one is Dharam, next one is Guru, next one is about Vidya, and it goes on so on. And we'll try to cover one chapter at a time, but we'll see how we go. And remember, the English translations, word for word, is on those blogs that we're sharing the links for. While we're doing these classes, I really hope that we feel comfortable to ask questions. I hope like it feels like you're kind of in this house with me type of thing. And if the question can be answered in class, it will. Otherwise, I'll note it down and we can put it into the group chat later, because we just want to stay on track. And I wanted to add a really important point here about questions, because most of us are from a Western upbringing. And so as Westerners, we are often more intellectual and analytical. And we kind of know that Gurmat is not the path of intellectuality, but then what does that mean? I think if we can just overall think about the type of questions, are they taking us towards Dharam and not actually becoming a blockage to it? So there is a part of analytical side that we have to let go of. As a general guide, not all questions need to be answered, and not all answers need to be known. Yeah. Not all questions need to be answered, and not all answers need to be known. So keep being curious in the class, keep asking your questions, and together we're going to weed out these type of questions. So we're in this together to fine tune that type of questioning process. And over time, you'll get better at figuring out which questions are actually relevant to the path of truth and which ones are actually just distractions. Because in this class, we're sticking to the path of Nam, which is the simplest path. So if something's a distraction, I'll just kind of say it. But if you're still interested in that answer, like we can still see it in the chat. Is there any questions up to this point? After this, we'll start. Ooh. So Saruktavali text starts off with a Mangala Charan. And a Mangala Charan is a praise to one's Guru. And Pandit Hardayalji writes in their Mangala Charan, they mention the names of Vishnu Ji, Ganesh Ji, and Mata Saraswati Ji. And Bhai Manpreet Singh Ji has explained all this in the perspective of Gurmat. So you can, if you've read the full English translation, you'll see that it all points then to the one Guru. And that's what we have to always keep in mind as Sikhs, that there is only one Guru, despite how one other person might see it. So a Mangala Charan is a prayer done at the beginning of anything, and it's a way to put our Guru before our own intellect. Jindpan has actually done a really nice PDF on Mangala Charan, which I'll share in the WhatsApp group later. But before doing anything, we pay our respect to the one that gave us the wisdom, rather than saying it's our wisdom. So this helps us keep humble and keeps us knowing that Guru is the source of anything good or wise that we learn. And so rather than speaking out of ego, we know that anything that we do know, it is by the Kirpa of Guru. And this is not just in like a, saying it, Pandit Hardayalji, they didn't just write a few lines. When you read through it, it kind of feels like, wait, is this a whole chapter by itself? Because they genuinely feel that anything that I have to say is by my Guru's blessing, by my Guru's mat. So whatever comes next, we know that Pandit Hardayalji is doing it with humility. It's like a text of surrender. It's not them saying this is how it is. They first given so much weight to the Mangalacharan first. Just like to open that up for chat if anyone actually noted that while you were reading it. And any thoughts on that, guys? No thoughts? Why do you guys think that a Mangalacharan is important in your own words?
Because it keeps not only one humble in the writing, but in the conception of the text, in the consumption of the text, it keeps one humble. It's kind of, it's the opposite of self-aggrandizing and putting the link to your book on Instagram. It's the opposite. It's actually deferring every bit of error to the student and every bit of like perfected wisdom or correctness to the teacher or to the one who inspired such.
Oops, that's perfect. Sorry, 1 second. That was perfectly said. Thank you, man. So the first chapter is about Dharam. Yeah, we'll just get into it. So Dharam is the source of happiness and it's a friend of all. It's a destroyer of sinners. It's always in a person's favor, not against. It is kept by all wise people. It gives many fruits, including peace, happiness. It destroys sins. You attain the 3 types of liberation. But of course, a Gurmukh doesn't seek any of these fruits. They just go towards Naam. And without Dharam, one is subject to hell. So physical and non-physical. There is no real friend of the heart besides Dharam. So these people like Dharam, they want to forever keep it in their memory and they have full confidence in Dharam, knowing that Dharam will always be their support. So many times, even in my own life, I've been in situations that genuinely the only thing that has saved me is Dharam. And what I mean by that is that some situations in life are just so painful that without Dharam, without an idea of what hukam is, without an idea of what acceptance is, it would just be so painful. And even I see like my friends going through things and I'm at a loss for words of what I can even give, how I can even console them, because the thing that saved me in those situations was Dharam. And without it, we would just keep getting stuck in not just emotions, but also be inflicting more pain on ourselves. And there's some experiences like this that you get to points in life that not even your own friends, your own family, or even your life partner is able to help. Like it's really just you and Dharam that's in that moment there with you. I think that's really important. So next, we learn more about some qualities of Dharam. So how it is created, how it grows, and how it's destroyed. So Dharam comes from Kima, like forgiving one, Ahimsa, Daya, so compassion, Mrid, speaking sweetly, Sat Bachan, so accepting the truth, the Bachan of the wise, And Sattva of course, means that we might not know it is true, like we might not have experienced it, or our knowledge is still limited. And so Sattva is being humble and recognizing that this is true regardless of what I perceive it as. And so we don't get trapped in our own understanding. And Tap, being in control of our indriya, so that includes being content with things like food, sleep, body, or constantly needing to entertain ourselves on our phone. So all of these can be a ground of starting dharam. The problem obviously comes when we get stuck here, but these are all grounds to start it from. Dan, which can be in various ways, giving your time, your wisdom, your skills, your wealth. Good conduct and just being there for someone, being the shade for someone. And where are we up to? Being without jealousy. So all these things, you know, just being a good human being generally, and living in a natural way to your body, and that these are all grounds of dharam. The question is, how do we then move further from here? But what we're seeing now is we don't have these grounds, you know, we're basing our dharam on things that are pretty much the opposite of these, and then we wonder why is it not progressing. So these foundations are really important. So of course, dharam then is not obviously in the bana or what we wear outwards, it's in the bani and the characteristics that we develop inwards. And another thing that I wanted to mention here is that these characteristics are not obviously limited to people that just look like a Sikh or something. So that's why dharmic people can come from all different walks of life, and we should be able to see that it is the one dharam. Yeah, that's that one. So if we want to Pargat dharam, then it would be through just accepting the Sat, the Bachan of the Ved, the Granth, and the Mahapurush, regardless of our own experiences or knowledge or not. So that is, we know dharam exists when we accept that, yes, that is true, even if I cannot see it. Once it is manifest, then how does it increase? With Daya, Dan, and Kima. So Daya, compassion, Dan, giving, and Kima, forgiveness. And dharam is destroyed with anger. So now this is another really important point too, because say, for example, you say Sat Bachan Dharam hai gaya, and you know, these are the Bachan of the Ved, or this is the Bachan of Guru Gobind Singh Ji in Guru Granth Sahib. What do we do then after? Do we then become egotistical and then fight with others and say, yeah, you don't understand it in the way that I do? Because that's a form of anger. Right there, the dharam is destroyed. Because as soon as we start saying right and wrong, that's where dharam stops. And it's really hard, especially when you have friends and family who don't see the importance of this, and you really want to share that with them, but you can't really let that get to you. Instead, you have to focus on Daya, Dan, and Kima. That's what will make it continually increase, doing seva of others, even for those that aren't on this path. So there was a beautiful story about mercy, which I think you guys all read in the translations, correct? About the sadhu. So I'll share it again anyway, because it's such a good story. So there was once a sadhu, a holy man, who came into the jungle and said that he was going to do bhakti, and he was going to make his salotar, so like a type of club, and he tied it to the ground, and he said, I'm going to do bhakti and sit here until this salotar turns green and with moss. And so he was meditating there, and there was also a king who was hunting, and he saw the sadhu meditating, and he said, oh, like, you know, why are you so deep in meditation? And the sadhu became annoyed that the king actually got him out of that meditation. And so he said, with a bit of annoyance, he said, I'm not going to stop doing my bhakti until this salotar turns green. And so the king actually became inspired from the sadhu, and he says, okay, I'm going to sit down with you and try it as well. So he had a trishul, which is a trident, and he put that down with him. And he said, I'm going to do the same, sit here in meditation until it turns green. So then there was another person who was coming by and he was being chased by bandits, and he went to the sadhu first and asked for help to, be protected from the bandit. And the sadhu said, like, in a lot of anger, don't you see that I'm performing bhakti? Like, leave me alone, let me do my bhakti. And then the man went and looked for more help, and he found the king, and the king, without even hesitating, he stopped his meditation and he went off and he saved the man from the bandits. When the king sat back down into meditation, his trishul became green within just 5 minutes. And so his tapasya had been completed. And then the king went to the sadhu and, he bowed, and the sadhu said, what are you doing? And the king said, well, my tapasya is complete, it's gone green. And that's when the sadhu realized that something had gone wrong there. In this story, it goes to show that it's not about how much you're really trying and sitting in meditation. And that can also be, for example, when we become really rigid about when we want to do Gurbani at a certain time, but people need help at that time. Where the king, he was in an instant, he didn't delay helping another person. And in that, his tapasya was completed much quicker. So it was a really beautiful story. I really hope you guys got a lot from that story. But I also recommend that you listen to it again from by Manpreet Singh Ji's katha in Punjabi, because now that you've heard it in English, you will understand it in Punjabi, and then it's even nicer. But yeah, it's a lot to take in about how dharam increases versus gets destroyed. So now through dharam, we also get, Pandit Hardyalji writes of it, a pure family, good body, worldly comforts, enjoyment in food, keeps their honor, knowledge, and without bodily disease. But for a Gurmukh, this criteria remains true because we don't actually have any desire or expectation. So whatever family we have, body, home, food, they actually stay content in that. And they always keep their honor because they're always remaining in truth. They're free of disease because not only are they content, but the main disease of Homme Dirig Rog hai, is also being eliminated. And then, of course, in a physical level as well, like as our vibrations and our abundance mindset is opening up, we of course get a lot of clarity in life, which resolves a lot of conflicts and parts of life as well. But this is all without desire of that. It's not like we're desiring to have the greatest body or food. So those who do keep their dharam, what do? They do vichar of this wisdom, because again, then sharing that Brahmgyan is the greatest bala, it's the greatest gift for both the speaker and the listener. By instilling the dharam, the man becomes bairag from the indriya, so it starts turning inwards. It's not now looking for the next thing to entertain itself, it's looking inwards. And so whoever gets to the state of turning away from Maya to fulfill needs, such a life is considered safal. So when we think about all this, we think, is it okay to not follow dharam? Like, what could the worst thing be? And it's not. The interesting thing is that dharam is not forced on anyone. But the analogies given in this text are so beautiful. They say that in the same way that the sky doesn't look beautiful without the moon, the same way a sarovar doesn't look good without a lotus flower, in the same way a human doesn't look beautiful without dharam. That's just such a beautiful way to put it. On top of that, of course, the person who does not even obtain one of the four fruits, santokh, tap, brahmgyan, dayadan, they're considered to have a wasted life. And a wise person who wants a fulfilled life will fulfill their dharam in any way and at any length. Then there's more examples into the beauty of dharam. So they give in analogies like a horse with a beautiful gallop, or a lake with a swan, a farm where there's rain, a fool when he's silent, fire where there is heaven, which is a spiritual fire. In the same way, a dharmic person is elegant when he instills sumat, which is good mat, and only such a person has shobha. So that's the beauty of Dharam. We're not going out preaching to everyone, you be dharmic, you be dharmic. It's about the beauty of it when it is there. And then there are, of course, sukhi and dukhi people in the world. So there is happiness and pain. The beauty of Dharam is that the people that are already sukhi, the people that are already happy, they will only just become more happy. The people that are dukhi, their dukh will be eliminated, their pain will be eliminated. So whether you are a happy person gaining more happiness, or whether you have suffering and your suffering is eliminated, in both ways it's a win-win situation. Dharam is always favorable. There is never a loss to follow Dharam. That's a big thing in this whole text, is that Dharam is always favorable. That's repeated again and again in this chapter, actually. And then the chapter ends with a bit of a summary. So they say that we've done 7 daughters, 2 chopi and 1 kabit. And these are the 10 stanzas. This is the first chapter of Saruktavali. And this was about Dharam, relayed by poet Hardayalji. So I'm hoping now we could just open it up to a bit of discussion. How do you guys find that? I think I spoke a bit quick, didn't I?
No, it was good. It was really good. 2 things that came up while we were going through it, when we were going through the attributes of Dharam, Hannah, and one of them was mittha bolna, speak sweetly. And I remember back to when we were first doing this class for Manpriviji, and the question that came up to my head was that not always is speaking sweetly needed in certain times. You know, sometimes you have to be a bit more for the person's own good. How people say like harsh truths and stuff like that, right? And he even explained that people have different kind of characteristics as well. So even though somebody speaks a bit more harshly, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It's just the way they convey their thoughts, and they still mean good. So my question was more about, okay, if an attribute of Dharam is speaking sweetly, how does that work then, considering all these other things? And then Manpriviji explained it, saying speaking sweetly doesn't relate to the words that you're using. At times, sure it can, but what it relates to more is speaking the truth.
Correct. Because it comes up in Anand as well, that for the person that is not going towards truth, such is skora, it's bitter. So even though the person is trying to be speaking sweetly and being for the good, it feels bitter. But for the person that is on the path, that same truth feels so sweet. But also, Manpriviji also shared in that it's important to not, you know, some people just aren't on this path. And so to constantly fight with them, that is also no good. And sometimes small white lies, or just kind of, you know, being very careful with your words, is also speaking sweetly, even though it doesn't come naturally to you. But choosing your words carefully, that can also be a form of speaking sweetly.
Even knowing when to speak the truth. So basically, if by you saying the truth is going to cause harm to the other person, or create such a scenario that's going to do harm, then in that scenario, then, you know, a white lie is better than saying the truth. So an example he gave of that, if like a murderer is chasing over someone and looking for them and asks you for the direction of where that person's gone, if you then speak the truth and think you're being dharmic and telling them the truth, but they're asking for the intention to go kill that person, then is it really the right thing to do? You know, so in that situation, you lying or not telling them would be more dharmic compared to pointing them to the right direction and saying the truth. So I like that example. It kind of put it into perspective. Yeah, I think that was really good.
Yep. I think over time, like as we go into this journey, there's a part of us that we just can't deny. And that's why, you know, in Gurbani, we just say like, thoda bolo, just speak less, because we really just can't contain what we want to say. So just speak less. That's another strategy, because the thing is, sometimes someone poses as spiritual and they're kind of having these conversations, and then you kind of correct them, well, that's not dharam or something like that, and then it kind of hurts them. Well, you couldn't have ever known that, because that's what they presented with, that's what they were wearing, that's the words that they were saying. But if you know someone more closely, and you know, for example, your brother or your parents, that they're just not like that and they're just asking questions here and there, those are the times that speaking sweetly could also include a little bit of lies or such. When you know someone, when you know the intentions. Everybody else share. The question was point about dharam that stood out. Hanji, Ekam.
And just to like summarize, so like metabolna is like to like speak, like know when to speak the truth and like lie. Like, is that what it is?
Not so much lie, just yes, knowing when to speak the truth.
Okay.
I guess it was more Mitbolna is referring to speaking the truth, but it was just highlighted that there's obviously situations where there are exceptions of it. For example, that murderer situation, or where you feel like saying the truth in this situation is going to do more harm than good, then those are basically the exceptions, but Mitbolna would still refer to, you know, speaking truthfully.
So for example, to me, Mridbolna means speaking to the benefit of someone. Now, if my mom, every day she's doing some ritualistic thing in Dharam, right? And I know it's ritualistic and it's not really like the super spiritual way of Dharam. Me distracting her from that, like, oh, mom, why are you doing it like this when we're meant to be doing it like that, would be not considered Mridbolna, because I'm taking her away from something that she's doing up to the best of her capability, up to the best of where she understands. So it's always about what I'm saying, is it actually beneficial for the next person, or is it less beneficial? Is it actually harmful?
If I might, a useful mental exercise is that if you can't quite put your finger on what it is, you can definitely put your finger on what it isn't. And so speaking or acting, which involves a lot of these other aspects and involves dharam in general, I think based on the description of the 10 aspects, is not speaking with malicious intent, but also not speaking with vitriol, not speaking with a sense of self-aggrandizement, and also not speaking with crudeness. Not speaking with crudeness. I had a friend actually here in Texas who we joined the Pantara around the same time, but he was much, much younger. And he would never take kind of the note from the uncles and aunties and even myself who try to tell him, you're speaking harshly. You're using language that you used before your tongue became a Khalsa's tongue. You can't speak like that. And he, of course, being young and rebellious, heard that as, oh, an authority's telling me how to talk. And I reacted accordingly. But he understood it to be a directive instead of, no, this is how you act wise. This is how you act wise, involving your speech. Polite, like forgiving, merciful, charity, purity without jealousy, good conduct. All those could kind of be actions, but they could also involve speech. They can clarify what sweet speech is, polite with words, merciful with words, recognizing scripture with words, being charitable. And so, like, those are kind of two exercises, using kind of the context aspects, because they're all dharam, using the context aspects. And if you still can't figure it out, what I do is just kind of run it backwards. And that is, what is it definitely not? And then that helps kind of figure out what it is.
That's beautiful. Could you actually share those three further things into the WhatsApp group? I think that will be helpful.
What three further things?
when you said not with crudeness, not with the three.
Oh, malice.
There's-
Yeah, crudeness, malice, and vulgarity.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Really good. What else stood out about Dharam? Maybe Kirit, I want to hear from you. Why is Dharam or something that
I
stuck?
think for me, one thing that stood out was when it said that sometimes you have to, from the Saki, where it says that sometimes you have to, like, look at the bigger picture. Because sometimes I feel like I get lost in my own jivan. I'm like, oh, I need to get this done, I need to get this done. Or even though this is at like, maybe like I'm just trying to like do my own seva, focusing on myself. And I forget to look at like on a more wide scale, like where like just Saruktavali Granth, sometimes I'm like, oh, but like this might take like away from this thing. Like I have to do this much bani, and like if I do this thing, I don't have time for this. And sometimes I feel like I get so lost in my own like what I want for myself. I kind of forget that sometimes bhakti is doing seva of others. You get more from doing seva of others than maybe you get from just doing simran for a little while, So I
Yeah.
heard that for me was something that really like, especially because I feel like so yesterday there was a rant by Glenwood, and I was like I'm someone I like to be there on time, like right when it starts, and someone was over and she had to go do something, and it would have taken us an extra hour. But then I was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna miss it, but then also like she needs this like right now, so I was like, "Chalo koi na." Like in my head, I was still like kind of like a bit like petty about it. I was like, oh, I'm gonna miss like an hour of rants by, but like you do it, it's like, what did you really miss? Like, kind of
Yeah.
like look at the bigger picture and like think of more than just yourself.
Yeah, that's the beautiful energy that when you get into this sangat that we're so blessed with over here as well. I used to struggle with that too, but then when I meet these people who are just giving and they're not even thinking, then I was like, wow, it's always going to work out. And you start getting that validation, and then you start being like, you know what, it will work out. And then you start being like that yourself too, like, so that even that mental chatter isn't there. You're genuinely just like, it's okay. And then that nature will start going across to people, and they'll be like, wow, you're so calm, like you're so giving, it's just happening through you. And then it's when you'll know it's actually not through me.
I think it takes a lot to recognize that about yourself as well. So I applaud Kirith for, openly sharing that. That's definitely a great step forward and stuff. But coming into the Sangat, one thing that I realized really quickly, or something that was answered pretty quickly, was how, because I always used to read in Gurbani as well, they would talk about bhagats and stuff that would 24/7 be in remembrance of Maharaj, or 24/7 be in Simran. And I would just kind of think about that in the day and age we are now with work and, some people studying and all these things. And it's like, how can you be in 24/7 remembrance when you have to do all these other things? And it was kind of explained to me that because we see these other things as external to Bhakti, so we put Bhakti and Simran in one bucket, and then we put all of our worldly affairs and all the other tasks we have to do in another bucket. And because we make that separation, it's then impossible for us to merge the two. So my Bhiji explained to me that when you're working, think of the clients that you're speaking to or the tasks you're doing. Think of it in a mindset that you're doing it for Maharaj. This is also a seva that's given to me. I'm performing these duties and roles because Maharaj is wanting me to do this. I'm doing it for him, Hannah. When you're speaking to someone or you're doing seva, see it as you're serving Maharaj, you're serving his bhagats and stuff. When you're speaking to someone, whatever it may be, whether it be you studying or whatever, still think of it as a bigger picture. So just relating everything back to it, that then goes into Simran. Because Simran, a lot of times we think about Simran just sitting down with our eyes closed and chanting the name of God, but in the bigger picture, Simran refers more to remembrance, right? So you could remember him in any form. You could be walking down the street and looking at the world and remembering him in that way, all the different forms he's taken of this creation. So I think that's something that really, really helped me early on, especially when I have to do late hours at work and stuff and feel like I'm not getting anywhere spiritually. I just have to keep reminding myself that, hey, instead of me waiting for an opportunity when I have free time to sit down and do bhakti, why don't I do it right now? while I'm doing all of this. So I think that was really good. And another thing I'd like to say on the topic of Dharam is nowadays a lot of us, including myself, initially I thought Dharam meant religion. And I don't know if this is just because of the English translations that get sent around, but a lot of the times we relate Dharam to religion, right? And then that way, when we kind of say that Dharam is only one, a vague English translation of that that's given is religion is only one, and that's turned into my religion is better than your religion because there's only one true Dharam, there's only one true religion, and then that's where we kind of get stuck. And Manpriji explained this very well, saying, Dharam, there is only one Dharam, and that Dharam is Naam. And Naam isn't bound to just one name of Maharaj or one religion. Nobody owns it. That's why there can be dharmic people from all walks of life, like Satinder Benji said as well. Like Muslims have the 99 names of Allah. Hindus have Beyond names as well that they recite, you know. Even Christians speak so highly about the purity of the name of God and the name of Jesus. So when you look at these things, it makes it more apparent why Dharam is one and why Naam is the absolute utmost Dharam, because it is something that unifies us all. So yeah, these are just a couple of things I thought that came to mind about Dharam. Pulchuk Mafni.
Nice, nice. Yoshita, Satvi, Lovejoy. Siddha can't have his mic on. Do you guys have any thing to share about what stood out about Dharam from what we shared today?
I think it would just be retreading the same ground, but I'm completely in agreement of, not separating our day-to-day task or whatever obligations we have with bhakti or simran. When we try and separate that, that's just creating more internal strife. So the solution is, very similarly to what's been said. I had a conversation with Bhai Manpreet Avirji, and he told me that, why are you separating your work from, Nam? And it just made complete sense.
Nice.
If there's anything that Manpriji himself would like to add.
Yes, Meherji. Go for it.
I really like some of the definition or the analogies it gave of Dharam. Only Dharam is a friend of the heart. I particularly like that because that really does put to bed, or it really does put to bed some ideas I had, as well as like I had the mention of Dharam as religion is interesting because that is it's a crude definition, but it is certainly one of the many. And I think like a good hypothetical working definition is also to kind of resituate religion in our minds, because that word also has kind of a negative connotation as it has been used for a lot of, oppressive situations throughout history. But it could just be because Dharam, and I'm comparing it with a Japanese word that has slipped my mind. I wrote it down, but I can't remember where I was looking for it a second ago. But it's like Dharam could be seen as to cut with the grain so that the knife stays sharp. So as you're working on wood, you want to cut with the grain, not only to make the cleanest cut, but also it keeps the blade itself that does the cutting sharp. And so, like, this is a way of internalized wisdom and the application of like human wisdom and human spirituality gathered over time. And it is how to cut with the grain, like how to get to the heart of humanity, to the truth, given our circumstance as time goes by and with us in it. And at that point, like, oh, well, then it's just good advice, you know? And so, yeah, Ikigai, yeah. Thank you. it's just good advice. And at that point, it's obvious, like when religion is being oppressive, well, then it has stepped into a dharmic action. It has stepped outside of dharma, because at that point, it's no longer cutting with the grain. It's just an axe. And so, yeah, I definitely, again, considering the saying who will remain nameless, I mentioned earlier, there was a mention of bedmat, which is kind of, I don't remember exactly the words used, but I read it as kind of double-minded or solipsistic. Like we can often see that as just like two-faced, but again, kind of that's a shallow almost interpretation. This, I think, is more like double-minded or solipsistic. Like you don't believe the wise advice coming from wise people. You believe they're all out to get you, or they're out to oppress you, or they're out to lie you or trick you, or they don't know any better. It's a kind of, it's a double mind. That's what it means, but it's kind of a toxic cynicism, which again, this all kind of is very poignant to today's day and age. I mean, Kali Yuga is Kali Yuga, right? But it's not getting better. And I did like also one last point, and I'll move on, is that dharma dies in anger, and wisdom is forgotten until anger passes. Dharma lives in forgiveness. Like that is extremely well-rounded, because that's an easy way you can check the mind as it's operating. Am I operating in anger? Then I must be not only outside of Dharma, but I've forgotten my wisdom, so I couldn't possibly be in it. Now that's a lot of thinking to do while you're angry, but in meditation, reviewed enough, it can prevent anger from beginning.
Even with,
Go ahead.
even with that, a lot of times we want to, again, when we go back into the intellectual side that we have, we want to complicate it. And yet it's so simple. Are we acting in the anger, or are we acting in the forgiveness and the compassion? The big other thing was the seva. In this whole chapter, Dharma is all about the benefit of other people, and that seva ban is not just a form of bhakti. It really is like the main thing that's said again and again in Gurbani as well. We give ourselves and surrender back into the Mangalacharan, seva to Guru. The path of Dharma is very simple. The way that we'll know that we're being dharmic is very clear. Dies in anger, lives in compassion, lives in forgiveness. But because it is hard, I think this chapter really helps consolidate. Why am I sticking to this? Why do I keep being the more dharmic person? And it just gives you that motivation. No, because it is always going to be there for me, because it's always felt favorable. Even in this moment, it's not favorable to me. Long term, it will be favorable.
Right. And I do like that we kind of alluded to that it was like the moon at night, like the lotus in the river. It's not so much, it's not poetry we speak, it's poetry we live. Like you should almost be able to preach it without words. If I were mute, I should still be able to be dharmic. So yeah, there's one more note, which is like, divine wisdom is that greatest charity, Brahm Gyan, and there is no dharma without mercy. So that was my notes on dharma, the long and short of it anyway.
Nice. How you're writing in the text, you want to verbally say it as well? Very nice. I'm glad like I just like sped through it. It means we get to chat more. Oh, okay. Did we hear from everyone? Did anyone not get a chance? There's one thing that I want to do before we finish the class. Maybe Siddiq Lavjot. Siddiq doesn't have a mic, sorry.
Vaiguruji, so actually I had an idea while Meher Singh was speaking, and while he was explaining and linking to the idea of
Brain?
Ikigai, ikigai, yeah. While he was relating to that idea, I started thinking of the two lines in Japji Sahib, where Maharaj says, "Give us chiara hoya, give kura totla pal, hukum rajai chalana nanak likhya naal." So here Maharaj is saying that if we want to break down the veil of untruth, then we need to, you know, accept and you know, go with basically accept the preordained order of Akal Purakh Waheguru. So in that sense, you know, linking it to the idea that Meher Singh was talking about, it's about going with the flow and linking it to the scripture that we were just going over as well. In the 10 aspects of Dharam, they all, you know, like it all basically refers to 10 different types of virtues. And, you know, for instance, being polite and being merciful and having sweet speech and all these things. And of course, the things which kill your dharam, being, of course, your lust or desire and your anger, these things are rooted when you deny the natural order of things. For example, when you have desire, it is rooted, your desire is sourced in, you know, when you're in that mindset that you don't accept that natural order. So, yes, that's kind of my idea that came to my head.
Beautiful.
While, yeah.
Beautiful. I think just adding on to that, I'm so happy that we're seeing the main picture here. Like that's like such a big relief. Going with the grain, going with hukam, all these main things, these are the big concepts that we have to be focusing on. Part of that is when we go by hukam, we start being like, okay, but this part doesn't feel like it's going by hukam, or it feels like a bit off. I recommend everyone to go by, is the basic of how our body is wired, is it functional? So if we are having, for example, dysfunctional eating patterns and we get stressed and then we eat out our takeaway, you are not going by Bana like Jalakoina Maharaj burger. That's actually like, it's just dysfunctional. So you just go back to, well, what's the functional way of it? Because even though you're going by the natural order of overall life, you're not going by the natural order of your own body. So even with your own emotions as well, there is a natural emotional thing that happens within friendships. And if you don't have that natural thing, if you're too much of a people pleaser or the other one, then you don't get the right reaction and then you start overthinking. So you just have to reset all those things to the natural form, and then your relationships and everything, the to and fro between all of these things, the natural order in your mind and in your life will start to become a lot clearer. Cool. Well, I guess we'll just move on to the next bit then. And then we'll finish up with Manpreet Virji at the end, please. So as I said, I wanted to share, like just go over one concept at a time. And I guess today, let's just talk about mat. The word mat comes up so much in Gurbani. We have manmat, gurmat, and in here we had surmat, sutmat. So let's talk about what we understand what mat means. And then next week, we will have chapter 2 in Guru. Okay, guys? Mat. Open to anyone. How would you define mat?
Could it mean a way of thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like an interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always see it being defined as intellect, I guess.
Mm-hmm. When we say Guru di Matalani or Gurudev di Matalani, Kise di Matalani.
Perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Few good answers in the chat as well.
Yep. As a whole group, I'd like to get to like a kind of consensus so we can have that same shared understanding whenever the word comes up. So we've got perspective, wisdom, way of thinking, philosophy, siddhant, doctrine. Because you know what the interesting thing is? We all think in our own language in here. But when we want to use the word mat, hopefully it's the same understanding that everybody has, methodology. Nice. And you know, I'm not here with the definition, but like absolutely all of them, way of thinking, the totality of the thoughts. If, you know, Guru Sahib was in front of you and what mat they would give you, like that whole way of thinking, perception, the whole man idea, thoughts, and you are asking, can I have that? You know, you're empathetic and you surrender, can I have that? I don't want to go by the one that I have here, the collection, the memories. So when we say the word mat, let's try and remember all of these things. Does anyone have any final questions or anything? And then Mampi Viji, if you could please just share.
I did have one final question, just based on what you said right before discussing mat, and that was kind of resetting your body or your self to the natural order of how it should be. Completely agree, but I'd love to hear some tips or something on your end as to how we can reset it to the natural order.
When we follow Dharam, like when our eyes are on Dharam and Naam, and we act according to it, all those things will fall in place. And if you have that same perspective when you're doing the seva of other people, if you do seva of yourself in the same way, you will eventually get there.
That's a great answer. I think even when we start doing seva of others, it's still external, and a lot of the times, including myself, we neglect ourselves and serving ourselves in the same way and seeing Maharaj within ourselves. So a lot of the times we might treat everyone else as, you know, amazing and the embodiment of Maharaj. Then the way we act towards ourselves and our own self-thought and self-thinking and all these things can be very negative at times. So I think that's a great answer. It's important to point that out when it's happening too, and recognize Maharaj within yourself as well.
And so in that, what I propose there is, rather than going on this like mental health journey and like wellness is me, because that still goes into your ego, you just want to be like, wait, there's Prabhuji within me too, even if I can't see it, main man liya, because Guru Sahib says it's there. So then do seva of that. So just keeping your eyes on the truth. Okay, Manpreet Viji.
Just to add a bit of my opinion on it, what Jind was asking, like, how can you bring synchronous, or how can you have actually match your dharam with the wellness of your body and your mind, right? So right today morning we had a session, game session. So we were playing football. After that, we all sat together, and then each one of us were asking questions. So one of the questions asked was, why do you want to maintain a healthy body? Right? Many of us gave this answer that I need a healthy body so that I can have a healthy mind. Right? And Dharam is all about giving. Right? So if you yourself are struggling with your mind and body, what can you give to others? So health and Dharam will go hand in hand. Yeah. So just like Maharaj says in Dasam Bani, Maharaj says, Alap ahar sulup sinindra, daya chama tan preet. So this is what Maharaj is telling us, how to live or how to maintain a healthy body and mind. Maharaj says, Alap ahar, eat less. Right? Alap ahar, sulup sinindra, have a deep and less sleep. Deep sleep and less sleep. So how do you have a deep sleep? You need to exhaust your body. You need to do exercise. Only then you can get into a deep sleep. Alap ahar. You eat less, so you'll be able to have more energy throughout the day. Because your stomach is not just churning and trying to digest the food. Right? It's actually giving out energy. Alap ahar, sulub se nindra, Daya, Chhama, Tan, Preet. Alapahar ho gaya. Daya, have compassion. Now this is the wellness of the mind. Daya, Chhama, forgiveness. And Preet, love everybody. So for the body, just do two things. Eat less and exercise. For the mind, have three things: compassion, forgiveness, and love everyone. So this is the word. This is how Dharam is equally effective on your body and mind. Yep. So you maintain a healthy body and mind. That's how you can give to the society. If we ourselves aren't in if you're struggling with your own body and mind, you can't give much. You'll be asking for help. Yeah. Just like to add that, and yeah, leave you with that. Right. Thank you, Satinder, for taking this time and sharing your wisdom. It was lovely to hear from you.
Did we have anything else that anyone wanted to share at the end? Did we finish?
Nothing to share, but amazing class. Thank you very much once again for preparing such an amazing presentation. And, I know it's not easy and takes a lot of effort and stuff to teach. So thank you to our.
Yeah, and hopefully we can have more questions because we are dropping down in questions in the Punjabi class. So I'd like to have more questions in the English class.
We'll just
Right.
finish off then with Mool Mantra again, guys. Vaheguru, Ik Onkar Satnam Karta Purakh Nirbhav Nirvair Akal Murਤ Ajuni Saipang Gur Prasad Jap Ad Sach Jugad Sach Hai Phi Sach Nanak Hosi Phi Sach ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ Okay, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.